Hello and welcome. This is part 3 of the 3-part Academy Readiness series. And today we're going to be talking about arriving Academy ready. So there's a really fun point in the hiring process, and that is the moment that the job stops being hypothetical. And it usually happens around the time somebody receives the tentative selection letter, the initial job offer. It can be a little bit later, maybe after passing the structured interview. But really, there's a point in time when it becomes exciting. It's no longer, am I going to pass this step? Am I going to be able to do this physical test or do this structured interview? You start focusing on, wow, when am I going to the academy? When am I going to get the final job offer? And it is a really incredible moment when the job isn't something that is, so far out in the distance for you anymore. And then at that time, there's really a shift in attention. And instead of looking up every single hiring process and trying to do, these extensive, research and find out all about passing a certain step, the focus shifts to the academy. And in the previous videos, we've talked about the academy being demanding. We've talked about the standards being the same for everybody. It won't slow down if you're not prepared. Everybody, regardless of, age, gender, language ability, is going to have the exact same standards. And really, the mindset shift becomes more of, do I have what it takes to pass the academy? And instead of the hiring process, it's all about the academy now. And really, this is the point at which you don't need more facts, more research, more information going into your mind. It's really about making a decision about your preparation. So there comes a point in time when you either decide, hey, I'm going to get serious about my academy preparation. I am going to go all in on this. I am going to train as if I'm going to be going to the academy. Or you allow yourself to continue drifting and kind of postponing your preparation because you might tell yourself, oh, I don't have my final job offer yet. Or I haven't got my background cleared yet. Or I haven't taken the polygraph yet, or I haven't passed the structured interview yet. And so really at that point, you're kind of giving yourself all these reasons to wait. And in the hiring process, you can totally get away with that because there's no pressure on you. There's no instructor checking up on you. There is no schedule that is being enforced upon you. There is not a portal task that says academy preparation. This is the part where it's completely on you, and the academy is requiring you to, I shouldn't say requiring, the academy is counting on you to be proactive and to make a good decision about your preparations. And what can happen sometimes is this sneaky little misconception that can be quite dangerous. And that misconception is, surely the academy is going to make me ready, right? I think the tendency is to think, well, I'm going to be there for a few months. Like, surely the academy is going to, make me an agent, that, there's going to be like this switch that is flipped. And the academy does equip you to become a Border Patrol agent, but it only builds on the foundation that you already bring with you. So it doesn't start it from scratch. It already assumes that you are capable in certain ways, mentally, physically, emotionally, that you have your things in order back home. And really the responsibility lies on you. It doesn't lie on the academy. It doesn't rely on the instructors, but it really depends on what you bring with you to the academy. So what happens is if you postpone and you wait longer, you feel more comfortable in the moment because you're not running, or you're not running as much, or you're not doing your workouts with the same level of intensity. Maybe you've put off some, financial things that you need to tie up, or maybe there's some family stuff that you have been, putting off or whatever. And it is not removing the discomfort. It's really just delaying it. And what happens is like that delay causes the discomfort, causes the pain to actually compound. So that's why I want to talk a little bit about the idea of ownership. And that's really when you take responsibility for getting your stuff together without being compelled by somebody else, without having a deadline looming that is pressuring you, without having someone else checking in on you. And how you handle that situation is really a choice. So whether you are proactive in deciding or you're reactive and just drifting, that indecision it's still a decision. So there is a gap between being an applicant and being an agent. And when you get to the academy, it's not a magic switch that flips. And that training the academy is going to provide you really is going to put weight and stress test that foundation that you show up with. And starting earlier has so many benefits. Not only will you experience a more pleasant time during the physical training and the academy itself, if you have done the things that you need to do ahead of time, there are unforeseen circumstances that can pop up and may cause you to need to focus on those. Whereas if you are coming to the academy not well prepared in other areas, you might have to address those other areas also. I talked in one of the other videos that I was surprised that I struggled a bit in one of the driving aspects. That was not something that I could have foreseen ahead of time. But when it did pop up at the academy, I was really glad that I had other things in order so that I could give that particular area the focus that it needed. So that's one of the benefits of preparing early is when you have your mindset right, when you have your physical training right, if there are other things that pop up, maybe Spanish needs some extra attention, or, you end up in firearms remedials or something like that, you have enough reserve attention and time that you can address those things. So training early really stacks the deck in your favor. It really helps build that foundation of strength that you're going to be able to draw from when you get to the academy. There can be other unexpected delays if you tend to wait too long in the process, and then you want to go really hard with your training and you don't allow yourself enough time to build up gradually. It is super common for applicants to injure themselves before they get to the academy without having that nice, slow training build up. Shin splints are pretty common. So you just want to kind of think about the things that might not be obvious that can impact your academy situation and how they relate to your preparation. So really, when you wait longer, you're shortening your runway, you're increasing discomfort. There's a possibility of all these other things to kind of pop up. So you want to do what you can as early as you can to just have a really nice long runway and, build that reserve, build that capacity. And that is another part that I think sometimes people stepping off the bus maybe aren't aware of. And that is the training environment at the academy is a different altitude. And there's generally a couple of weeks that it will take to acclimate to that environment if you're not already from that area. And so even if you do have good preparation, just breathing can be a little bit of a challenge. I'm not sure if the air is thinner or how exactly that works, but there's definitely effects that you can feel just from being in that environment. And it affects your run times, it affects your physical fitness and your exertion. And so arriving in really good condition and being able to withstand that couple of weeks of acclimating to the climate is really helpful. And I think sometimes people aren't always aware of that. So even if you are, having a really good times or whatever, when you arrive, just being in the environment generally slows most people down, at least somewhat. And while we're talking about preparation, I want to make sure that you understand it's not just the physical preparation. It's also mental preparation, emotional preparation, preparing your family for the fact that you're going to have to be away for nearly 6 months, and that you're going to be really focused on your training, and for them to kind of be in a posture to be supportive of you and understanding. If you have a house or children or whatever your situation is, like having those things in order, having things talked about, having your finances where they need to be so that there are not these lingering stressors, that you have taken care of those, or you have made arrangements for those things to be taken care of in your absence, because you are going to be gone for a while. And I think some people have this idea that they're going to be able to be home every weekend, or they're going to be able to maybe, I don't know, like leave the training environment often. And while you can, come and go when you are not in the training day, not during the duty day, you will still need to be studying. You will still need to be getting uniforms ready. You will still have a lot of other responsibilities that you need to take care of during your off time. So it is a bit of an illusion to think that you're going to be able to spend the same amount of time, with your family or, children as you would if you were not in Artesia. So just preparing everyone for that, preparing yourself. Another thing that is helpful to do is reading personal development books, mindset books, things like that. If you have some sort of, meditation practice or, prayer or whatever it is that you do to kind of help yourself deal with stress, like making sure that you are, doing those things and that you have those things available to you when the going gets tough at the academy. Like the things that help you build resiliency are also really important. And, some people keep a journal, like whatever that is to you, just kind of like having an awareness of, how you're going to handle things can be really helpful. So another thing that I think academy trainees sometimes aren't aware of is that things will pop up. There will be unexpected stressors, either with you at the academy. Maybe you'll, sprain an ankle, or you'll get sick, or, something will happen, or it will happen at home. Just like expect there to be bumps in the road, and kind of think ahead of, how you're going to handle those things. Something might happen, with family back home, and just having kind of a contingency of, what are you going to do if that happens? Because things just happen. Things happen for everyone in one way or another. It's almost unavoidable. So I just wanted to share those particular things that can kind of pop up and maybe you haven't thought about beforehand. And then another thing is this idea of your readiness, your preparation kind of being exposed at the academy. And I think a lot of people envision, oh gosh, the instructor's seeing me. What's it going to be like to have them yelling at me, to have them, pressuring me, pushing me physically. And that's great. It's good to think about those kind of things. But there is another thing that is overlooked, and that is your classmates. So your classmates are going to be in varying levels of physical condition. For the most part, some of them will be much better prepared than you. And there may be some that are not as well prepared as you. But when you are in your physical training, when you are doing things, the classmates may not love the fact that they have to do extra work because of you. When you're out in a run and you're falling back because you haven't prepared as much as maybe you could have or should have, while they were actually out there preparing, the whole class that's out there running may have to circle back around to pick up you or to pick up whoever the weakest link is. And that's not always something that all the classmates enjoy doing. And so, there can be some relationships impacted that way if other people prepared earlier and they are in a lot better shape and maybe you didn't, or, just having to come back from a run and pick you up. They're actually doing extra mileage in order to circle back and get you. And I'm not just talking about physical training, but also in other areas also, if someone is slow, if someone is weak, if somebody is, having difficulty in an area, there is the extra time, extra patience, extra things that are considerations that, you may need to realize those things. And some people can feel bitter or resentful or whatever about those. But the cool thing is it usually works itself out towards the end because, maybe the person that's really good at PT struggles in Spanish. And, the person that was weak in PT might be better at Spanish, or vice versa. Or maybe somebody, who's weak in PT is good in law. And then there's this aspect of like being able to help each other out that kind of smooths that over. But initially there can be a little bit of disgruntlement, when everybody's in the mat room doing flutter kicks, and there's one guy who's not getting his feet up off the ground. So the whole rest of the class is like waiting with their feet up, being in discomfort while that last person is like trying to get their feet off the ground. So, there will be situations like that. So, the instructors are going to see, your classmates are going to see, it's going to be apparent. There's going to be no hiding that. And then also one other aspect of this exposure is that your reputation as a trainee at the academy will generally precede you to your station. So it's kind of an exciting thing for a station to get new trainees. They wonder, where they're from, what they're like, if they're hard chargers, if they're, what they're like in the training. So there are conversations that happen between the academy and your station. And so generally they have an idea about you before you even get there. So even though you're not at your station, you're still building your reputation while you're at the academy. And I think that's one thing that people don't realize maybe until they get to their station. So just be aware of that in advance, that so many people are aware of your performance now that they're doing the like videos and like academy social media pages and things like that. The whole public can see, clips of running, clips of PT, clips of, firearms and the different classes that are being put out there. So there is no hiding anything. The Border Patrol world is very small. So they're going to be talking, they're going to be knowing what is going to be happening. And really you want to try to blend in and, not be the person that flips over a vehicle, not be the person that, shows up in the chow hall in your, PT uniform and shower shoes, just, things like that. And part of that is, really listening carefully to the instructions, listening carefully to the rules and regulations for how you're supposed to be behaving at different places, like the chow hall, like PT, like, law and places like that. And the more that you follow the rules and don't stick out and, are compliant with all the things that you need to do, the better off you are going to be. So just knowing that ahead of time, I think can help you feel a little bit more prepared. And I would just say that the other thing about the academy that maybe you might not be thinking about ahead of time, but will be obvious when you get there, is that because of the dry and arid climate, you need a lot more hydration than you would, well, depending on, where you're coming from. But for the most part, that was something that really surprised me, is not only because of the climate, but also the climate plus the exertion that you're going to be experiencing. Just getting yourself used to drinking a lot of water before you go can be super helpful. And there are no shortcuts. So if you think that you can maybe, take diet pills or some sort of like weight loss supplement or something like that, and just really like ramp up your, your weight loss or your training, like right before the academy, that is not a good idea. When you try to catch up like that, there are so many bad effects that could happen to you, your body, your kidneys, all of that kind of stuff. So a quick story. In my class, there was a trainee who was concerned about his physical performance. He was a little bit, slower in the runs and things like that. He was also concerned about being overweight, and he was getting some additional personal attention from the PT instructors. They were really giving him a hard time. And he wanted the job so badly that he decided he was going to take some over-the-counter, I think they were weight loss pills or something. And anyway, they just like kind of like sped up his system. And so he got overheated and fell out of a run. And it actually caused him some, health challenges there for a couple days. So in addition to kind of being behind in his run already and a little bit overweight, now he was on bed rest for a couple of days because he was recovering from this heat illness that he had. So I just want to, I guess, tell you that story to help illustrate that trying to do shortcuts is not a good and not a good solution either. So the only good solution is starting earlier with your preparation, taking it seriously, not doing too much too fast to get yourself injured, and really just gradually ramping things up. A lot of times people will say, like, how do I know how fast I should be running before I get there? And what I like to advise is there used to be a second physical fitness test that applicants would have to take within 30 days of going to the hiring process. It used to be called the PFT2, and it was administered by agents in the hiring process, but they did away with that. And that minimum standard was what they expected you to be able to do within 30 days of shipping out to the academy. And that was a 1.5 mile run in under 15 minutes. So if you could do the 1.5 mile run in 14 minutes and 59 seconds, then that was a pass for the run. You also had to do, the push-ups and the sit-ups that you still do in the PFT1. So I would say that that is the minimum standard that you should be coming into the academy with, that the academy has enough time to kind of get you from there to the final PT test, which is being able to run the 1.5 miles in under 13 minutes. But ideally, so that was a minimum, like the very minimum, you should be doing that if at all possible. It would be better to arrive at the academy already able to run the 1.5 miles in under 13 minutes. Because when you take into account the altitude and the environment, all of that other stuff, it'll probably slow you down when you have your initial PT test there at the academy. And they understand that. They've been doing it for years. They've seen trainees coming in. And so they understand, that there's going to be a couple of weeks of, that acclimation. And they have built that into the academy. So don't anticipate being able to catch up on, any training or any preparation that you have not done previously. You're not going to catch up. Shortcuts aren't going to work. When you miss training days, it is very difficult to recover from. And if you miss too many training days, you're done. Like, it doesn't matter the reason, whether it's, a physical illness or if something happened back home. Like, if you are not physically present in the training for the required number of days, then you're done. And depending on your performance and your attitude and all those other things, you may or may not be recycled into another class. But it's just not worth it. So I will leave you with this. And that really is that it's not the academy that is deciding who you become. The academy is confirming the decision, the actions that you took before you arrived.